Okay, and we've got a clock live. Now, let's see if it starts playing over here. Ooh, nice. Gonna mute that so we don't get an echo. Okay. And I think that we're properly going. Spectacular. Just gonna wiggle this window here just a touch. And I think that we're mostly ready to go. Good morning. We're hearing audio, progress, spectacular, excellent. Let's see, oops, I just clunked the microphone, speaking of audio. What have we got here? We've got Josh McCarthy from DeKalb, where it's actually nice this morning. Yeah, it was really, really nice yesterday in my neck of the woods as well, which is not too far from your neck of the woods, and that's part of what I'm going to be talking about today. Not the weather specifically, but I'm going to be talking about how the weather got me to go outside and do a whole bunch of priming yesterday. Anyway, okay, greetings from Taiwan, sunny Scotland, that's fun. Painting Eldar and Tau with my pal. Well, that's good. What else have we got? Lincolnshire, we've got England, we've got rainy Blackpool, Finland, got clear and sound, spectacular. Sweden, another Sweden, another Scotland, Germany, Australia, Cardiff, Jesse Daniel from Milwaukee. I was going to say Plague, but instead it's Prague, which is a different thing altogether. Texas, Plymouth, UK. We've got a Plymouth, Wisconsin, which is close by, but not as that. It's not the same thing. Let's see. We've got Zywan that says, "Thank you, Uncle Adam, for introducing me to wargaming. Currently learning how to play." Well, excellent. Glad to hear it. Got Kobe, Japan, Melbourne, or Melbourne, I believe is probably how you pronounce it. Mississippi, Germany, Texas, Idaho, Gold Coast of Australia, Sweden, Madrid, New Jersey, Central Minnesota. What else have we got? Florida. Well, no, someone's asking if anyone's on from Florida. For those of you who don't know, Florida is currently staring down the barrel of a very large kind of hurricane system coming at it. So if anybody is in, Florida, I hope that you're safe and doing well. Christopher Griffin says, "I'm also in Wisconsin. Priming season is almost over." Rattle can priming season is almost over. That is true. And like I said, yesterday it was pretty. It was just lovely out, and I was like, well, I've got some time, and I just went through and just grabbed a whole bunch of stuff that I had not been priming and I'd just been putting off, and just went outside and did a bunch. One issue though, and I'll talk about this too real quick. I see moderator Matt is on. Tampa, Florida. Well, that's good. We've got somebody from Florida. That's good to hear. J Tick says he's in the North Pole, which I know is not true. He's in the Milwaukee area. Good to see you. But anyway, so I've talked about it a bunch of times on the show and other videos. I did a video about it. But the Krylon camouflage spray paint, I ran out of the brown yesterday, the dark brown color. So I'm like, I'll go to Fleet Farm, which is where I've always purchased it in the past. Long story short, after 3 different stores, including 2 national chains, one being Walmart and one being Lowe's, I came home with Rust-Oleum instead, because I don't know what the heck happened. Like Krylon, when I talked to the people at Lowe's, the girl that I talked to, she had never even heard of Krylon. Now, admittedly, she was very, very young. She was a very young person working there at the Lowe's. And I don't even think she technically worked in the paint department. I was a little surprised that she was allowed to talk to strangers. She was very young. But when she got somebody in the paint department, finally, that person said to me, "Oh, well, yeah, we're not carrying Krylon anymore." So I don't know what's going on with that. So I'm going to have to do some tests between the Krylon and the Rust-Oleum, because Rust-Oleum also makes a line of camo spray paints, which are almost the same colors. It's the same 6 colors, roughly. But when I came home and sprayed the new dark brown on the old dark brown, because I hadn't been able to finish that piece of terrain, I think it's a little more red, which is a bummer. So, yeah. Anyway. Yeah, so let's see here. The Noob Painter says Krylon has this annoying habit of switching up their entire product line. I've had stuff disappear on me. Well, the thing is that like I can't even find like well, Walmart had a little bit of Krylon, but none of the camouflage stuff. The other two stores just stopped carrying Krylon. So I don't know. I mean, they seem to be still in business. And the thing is, you can't order it online either. I went onto I'm like, well, I'll just order on Amazon, I guess. I found like one guy selling one of the tan colors, but it was like 12 or 13 bucks a can. And there was another can that someone was selling for $45. So I'm like, that's a bad sign. So I don't know. Anyway, that was just a little quick mini rant. Sorry about that. Anthony B says, greetings from Las Vegas. Well, greetings, Anthony. Speaking of Las Vegas, I just bought plane tickets to Las Vegas for late January for the Las Vegas Open. Las Vegas Open is a wargaming convention event kind of thing. Started as just basically a tournament, but has now gone into becoming more. And it's, I want to say 26th to the 28th of January, but I'm just getting that off the top of my head, so I may be wrong. But yeah, so I'll be there at the LVO. I've been invited to come and give some seminars. So I'll be giving a couple of seminars about all of this, not this coffee, but the YouTube stuff. I'll be talking about YouTube, the technical junk, and also the marketing and branding and things like that. There was a loud thump, and now my wife is going to investigate, and it's most likely cat related. So just FYI. Paul Noxie says, I've literally just got inside from priming. Yeah, no, it's a phenomenon that as the weather starts to cool down and you see impending fall/winter, you all of a sudden go, oh geez, I really should go outside and do some more priming. At least that's the way I've been doing it. Now, the benefits of using an airbrush to prime are spectacular, but there are times, especially with terrain, sometimes you're just like, I just want to use a rattle can. Sometimes makes it easier. So Steve says, Adam, I just tried the camo paint and I love it, but I had to order it off of Amazon because even my local Sherwin-Williams don't have it. Yeah, that's not cool. I don't know. Steve said he could get it with Prime. See, I looked on Prime, and like I said, the cheapest I could find was like 12 bucks for a can, and normally that stuff is less than $5. Like the Rust-Oleum stuff that I ended up buying from Lowe's was like $3.50. So it's supposed to stick pretty well, I believe. It says it bonds to plastic, but it doesn't have the fusion technology that Krylon always pushes. So I don't know what the issue is with Krylon. I wonder sometimes if it's like a Coke versus Pepsi sort of thing. You know, you go into a lot of restaurants and you see Pepsi because Pepsi gives, they basically almost pay for you to take Pepsi in your restaurant sort of a deal, you know. But I don't know. It's hard to say. There's a lot of different ways that different brands sell things, you know, to stores. Like when you go to a store, like a big store, Target or whatever, and you see something on an end cap, from what I understand, those companies like paid to make sure that stuff ended up on the end cap. It wasn't just the local Target going, well, you know, we should try to sell more of these. It's all about kind of, you know, positioning in the stores and stuff like that. So Simon says Krylon is also popular in airsoft stores and the community. Well, that makes sense because it's about, you know, you want to camouflage your airsoft guns and stuff like that. I can see that, yeah. What else have we got? Some of those Krylon camo colors are on the discontinued list. Brown is on there. Usually it's due to pigment changes, i.e. workshop switching suppliers. Huh, well, that's weird. Matthew says, fun fact, the general public can't buy spray paint in Chicago because we can't be trusted not to tag up everything. Well, yeah, I could see that. I mean, you guys are, you know, I don't know about you guys in Chicago. What else have we got? Armageddon says, have you ever primed with Vallejo surface primer without an airbrush, meaning painting it on? I tried and it failed to achieve a good result. No, I've never brushed on Vallejo surface primer. I've only ever airbrushed it. That's a good question. I wonder why. Like, what kind of bad result was it? Like you had brush strokes, or you know, and you saw the marks in the paint, or did it not cover very well? I guess I got to be honest. I've never tried using never a primer for airbrush. I've never tried using an airbrush primer with a brush. I do use airbrush paints with a brush quite frequently. If you watched a bunch of episodes ago, I showed you guys my Forge Fiend for my Chaos Army. All the silver trim is Vallejo model Air Metallic Chrome. They've got a couple different lines, but it's the Vallejo Model Air line, not the Game Air line. Metallics, they have a metallic line within metallic, or within the Model Air line. And then the color is called Chrome, and it's a really nice, thin, but very, very opaque, bright silver that actually works great with a brush. It's one of my favorite metallics now, actually, as it turns out, so that's really nice. Let's see here. Peter Pan here says that Vallejo surface primer brushes on quite well. Well, all right, maybe you just need to shake it a lot more. There, Nicholas. That's I've found that to be the case. Like, I find if you haven't used your like GW wash in quite a while, if you don't shake it, it will be very glossy. But if you do shake it, it won't. It won't be. So, yeah, I could see that. Let me see here. What else have we got? Small hardware and automotive stores still carry Krylon camo near me, like Ace Hardware. When I looked on the Krylon website, they said, oh, these are the places you can buy the stuff from. And the first place they mentioned was Ace, which I don't think we have an Ace Hardware anywhere around here, but I should look. The second place was Lowe's, which is what caused me to go to Lowe's. And when I went to Lowe's, the Lowe's website says they carry Krylon paint, not the camouflage, but they do carry some Krylon paint, but they don't. Like, the girl went to the computer and typed it in and said, oh, it should be right here in aisle 9 in bay 15 or whatever, and it was not. And that's when she called the paint person who wasn't in the paint area, and then we found out that they don't carry it anymore, even though the website says they do, and Krylon's website says they do. But so yeah, it's kind of interesting. Damien says, I use Vallejo primer all the time and brush it on regularly. Works great. All right, well, we're getting different things here. Let me see. Howie says, hello, Uncle Adam. Greetings from Western Germany. How you doing? Caspian says, well, it's time to make a wet palette. Yeah, wet palettes are great. Those of you who've hopefully seen the video have started using wet palette. Like I said in the past, many times can barely even paint without it anymore. It just works really, really well. It keeps your paint, and it's not even really about like, it keeps my paint wet for the next painting session or for 5 painting sessions down the road. It's just that you're allowed, you can thin your paint, but it will stay wet for the entire painting session. It used to be when I was first learning to thin my paint, and I would put it onto like a tile or a plastic palette, and then you add a little bit of water to it, slush it around to get it thin, that it would dry out in a minute. The wet palette keeps it wet for as long as you need it to be wet, basically. So that's one of the big benefits. Let me see here. Legionnaire says, I've given up rattle cans. The humidity and high temperature are both at the point here in Louisiana that I would only have maybe a month every year that the conditions are right to prime. Yeah, we don't get a lot of time here where the conditions are right either, which is why I predominantly use airbrush. But, you make hay when the sun shines or something like that. So yesterday the sun was shining, and it was also, decent temperature and not too windy and decent humidity. So I kind of ran outside and did some work, which was good because it kind of lit a fire under me to get some specific pieces that I have literally had for 4 or 5 years actually just, primed, and now I can go from there. Little phlegmy this morning, so I apologize. I will have a little bit of coffee. Let me see. Moderator Matt says that Rust-Oleum camo is decent as well. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a lot easier to find, at least around me right now. Like I said, it's not exactly the same color. Like, there's still the same 6 colors, I believe, although I don't remember if I saw black. But I did see a dark brown, 2 tans, like a lighter one and a darker one, and 2 greens. It would be interesting for me to see if the colors, like, I know that the dark brown is just a little bit more red than the Krylon color, but it's not a big difference. But it is a little different. So, and as far as the texture and stuff like that, since I haven't started painting on the stuff that I primed yesterday, because I've been letting it sit in the garage overnight to outgas is the term. So, like, the propellant that sprays the paint onto the surface, it's not the paint usually that makes that smell, it's the propellant. So then the propellant is kind of trapped in the paint, I think, for a while, and you have to let it basically kind of float out from the paint. It's called outgassing, and that's why you usually spray stuff outside, because you don't want to stink up your house. and then the piece you've sprayed will also stink for quite some time, so you'll leave it outside, like in your garage or whatever, and then it will hopefully, those propellants will go away, and then the piece won't smell as bad. I mean, you can push your nose against it and still smell it, but it won't just stink up your living room if you bring it in the house or whatever. So yeah. Scott says the lack of Krylon camo hit us a few months ago in California. No idea what's going on with them. Yeah, I don't know if they're I don't think they're going out of business, but I don't know. Six Gunner 86 says, I had my first experience with 3D printing. My friend made me some pillars and crates for Frostgrave. They are awesome. Cool. Well, A, you sounds like you've got a nice friend who's making you cool stuff, and B, it's cool that you got the some kind of cool stuff for your terrain. You've got some 3D printed stuff. I think that's one of the benefits, really, of doing the 3D printed stuff. I'm kicking around. I've been doing some sketches and things like that of some things that I want to design and then print, and so I need to look a little bit more into software. Probably one of my next videos about 3D printing will be kind of looking at different pieces of software for creating, the actual shapes that you're going to then 3D print. So I want to do something along those lines, and I've been doing a bit of research myself, and my idea is then, of course, to share that research with all of you. So that's where that's at. Mark asks, any tips for lighting solutions in a garage hobby space without mains? By mains, I'm assuming you mean like electrical, like main electrical. I have an LED work light, but the shadows and general darkness are making painting real difficult. So let's see here. You don't have electricity in the garage, but you still want to paint there. Yeah, that's a tough one. There are some battery-powered lights that, if you look up, there's a company called Ottlite, Ottlite. I'm actually looking at one right now. And they are designed for crafts and things like that, and they do make some rechargeable lights. Their stuff is generally all daylight balanced because it's designed for crafters. I know they're popular amongst people who do scrapbooking and stamping and stuff like that, but also people who paint and things. I use them for that. Like, I used to always take them with me. Like, if I went to go paint someplace else, I would always bring one of these lights along, and I would usually bring the plug along as well. So if there was electricity, I could plug into it. But they usually would last. The light would usually last like maybe 2 hours. They're not LED. They are kind of a fluorescent, but a daylight balanced fluorescent. And they work nice, but Ottlite has a whole line. Some of them are not cheap, but that's where I would take a look at, yeah. Let's see here. What else have we got? Damien says, I'm building models like mad to get to use my cans to paint while it's still dry here in Houston. Yeah, well, that's a good idea. VJ Morph says, I've been using Rust-Oleum chalk to dark gray as a base coat on my new MDF terrain. Looks good and really great finish for terrain. Oh, that's interesting. Huh. Gianna Lomax, hi Gianna, says, I use Badger airbrush primer for minis and can spray and a can spray primer for large terrain pieces. Yeah, I mean, I can use airbrush on big terrain pieces, but it's just sometimes faster to use rattle can and then maybe go back and touch it up a little bit with airbrush, like if there was like a spot you missed underneath something or whatever. That's kind of what I do, as far as that's concerned. So yeah, like I said, yesterday when the weather was really lovely, I kind of went to town on that. So Nicholas J says, have you ever primed Reaper Bones minis? Any thoughts on that? I know there are people who are saying that they're very difficult to put primer on. Like you spray primer on them and then they don't dry or they get real tacky or something like that. I've never had that issue. I've only painted a few, and I really, really cannot remember whether I used airbrush primer or whether I used spray can primer. I think I used airbrush primer. So it could make some sense that because it could be the propellants that are acting weird with this sort of rubbery plastic that makes up bones, but I don't really know. I guess I should maybe do a video about it because I've had people ask me a bunch about it. I've never had any trouble, so I know that whatever I did worked, but like I said, I've only painted a couple. What have we got here? Oh, Ben Janice says, I picked up the 30th anniversary veteran Primaris Sergeant. Is there any plans to make it a unique unit, or is it just going to be something you can switch to with your regular intercessor squad? I don't know. Actually, I picked one up last night as well. I stopped in my local shop and they had one, and I got it. But I don't know. I don't know if it's a specific, like, it's going to be a special unit, or if it's got special rules. It may have special rules actually in the box, but I haven't looked. So yeah, that's a good question though. But it's a nice looking model. I'm glad that they do some of that stuff. I don't know if I want to open it or not yet though. What else have we got? Cheap eBay LED photo light banks run from double A's. Are rechargeable camera batteries, so bright and dimmable. Yeah, I could see something like that too. That's a good point. I've used their LED. They're like, I don't know, maybe 7 inches by about 5 inches, like a 5x7, and you throw double A's in it, and then it's designed to usually go on top of a camera and then act as a light for photography. But you could also put the batteries in there and like maybe throw rechargeable batteries in it and then use it as a dimmable light, because they do have a dial on the back usually. And then that would be also a good, potential if you need like a hobby light in a place where you don't have any electricity. I could see that. That could work out quite well. Let's see here. What else we got? Hey, Adam, any advice for a wargaming newbie on which skirmish type games one could enjoy with his newbie-ish friends? That's a good question. One option. So one option I would tell you would be, if you like sci-fi stuff, to look into Mercs. The issue though is that I don't know how, I don't know, like as a company I don't know that they're doing super well, but you can get the models for really inexpensive. They switched to plastics like a year ago, and so you can buy a set of like 10 figures, and you only ever use 5 in any given battle. So there's no points in that game. It's just that you use 5 guys, so they give you. And I think that the army sets that you can buy cost like $30, but you get like 10 plastic guys. So you can buy them for relatively inexpensive. Now, the thing is that the army book itself, or not the army book, but the main rule book, the Mercs 2.0, which is the version they're on, is not cheap. It's maybe like retail for $60. But it's a really, really nice book, all full color, lots of fluff and stuff like that. But, like for not a bunch of money, like the thing is if one of you's got the main book, you could go that way. I don't know if they do a PDF. Maybe they do a PDF, like they sell a PDF. I would look into something like that. Another good option for a skirmish game that really has, like, you don't need a ton of models, but there's a lot of models, optional or out there that you can buy, is actually a game made by our good friend here, moderator Matt, and that's called Wreck Age. It's post-apocalyptic, post-collapse, if you will, and like my Staker warband Stakers are kind of like homesteaders that are trying to kind of come back after the apocalypse and farm and protect their land. My Staker warband is, I think, 4 guys, I think, maybe 4 or 5, and so yeah, it's really kind of well done metal models, so they're different than plastics, but still really nice models, and the skirmish rules are free. It's a free download you can get right off their website. So that's another option too I would look into. I would say that like Malifaux is a great skirmish game, but if you're all real new to modeling, their models can be sort of difficult to put together. They're great, super detailed, crazy dynamic looking sculpts, but they can be really hard to build because they're so crazy detailed, crazy dynamic. They're great plastics, but they're difficult. Lastly, honestly, if you're into more fantasy stuff, Age of Sigmar Skirmish would be the way to go too, because the main Age of Sigmar rules are a 4-page download that's free. The War Scrolls, which are the descriptions of each particular model that you can get in the game, those are all free. You can get them on an app on your phone. The skirmish rules specifically is like $10. So you buy this $10 book, you buy yourself some models, whatever ones you like, kind of, and you download all the rest of the stuff. So that's also an option. So if you're looking for something that's post-apocalyptic, I'd say Wreck Age, or even kind of sci-fi. If you're looking for something that's hard sci-fi, then I'd say look at maybe Mercs, although, like I said, the book is kind of expensive, and I'm not sure exactly where the company's going these days. And then if you're looking for something fantasy, I'd tell you probably, again, this is all for beginners to some degree, I'd probably tell you to go look at Age of Sigmar Skirmish. So, yep, that's what I would tell you. Let's see here. Phil Morris says Shadespire is launching next month, which is also true. And then Infinity he mentioned too. Infinity, I think Infinity's difficult because I think that it's difficult because of the metal models. There's a lot of parts. Like I've had a hard time building those models, but there's a lot of people who do like that game. So it also depends a lot of times on what's being played in your area. Like if you're just going to be playing a very insular group where it's just you and your people, you and your friends, then it doesn't matter. As long as you guys all agree, you play whatever you want. But if you like to play like at the local shop and things like that, then you kind of need to find out like what gets played at the local shop. If you keep coming into the local shop with Malifaux, but nobody else plays it, everybody else is playing War Machine, well, then, you may want to think about getting into War Machine. Speaking of which, War Machine's also got a skirmish game coming out soon called Company of Iron. So that might be something to look into. It's basically their main game and its main rules, but it's designed to be played with smaller groups, like less than 10 models, I think. And that should be coming out sometime this fall, so yeah. Keith Miller says, Adam, are you interested in the Age of Sigmar Firestorm that was announced a while ago? I'm liking the box sets they were releasing with it. Question? I don't know. I'm not even sure what... I guess I have missed that. I haven't heard anything about Age of Sigmar Firestorm. I'll have to look into that. Anthony here also mentions The Walking Dead from Mantic is a great starter game. That's also a good point. And it's cooperative, kind of. So, like, you're all kind of fighting against the zombies. So that's also sometimes, depending on the dynamics of your group, that may be a good thing. So, yeah, that's a good point. Let's see. But, people are talking here a little bit more about Shadespire. I'm hoping to see a copy of Shadespire before it comes out. Like, I'm hoping that they're going to send me a copy, and I'm going to maybe do a video or two about it, because I played it again at Gen Con. I played it back in May, and I think I was in a bad mood or something, and I was just like, I don't know. But then I got to play it again at Gen Con this year, and I really think it's interesting. It's a really interesting kind of, like, gateway game. It really straddles between board game and war game. But it's shorter, like Space Hulk is also a gateway game, but it's a kind of a long gateway game. This is shorter. It's designed to be a little bit more competitive, or can be played that way. But even if it's not competitive, you can still just play it. I think you can play you should be able to play best out of 3 in about 45 minutes, according to them. So that's cool. I've got something itching me. I got an eyelash or something going on up there. Phil Morris says, yeah, on the hobby side, Infinity and Malifaux models are not as newbie friendly. That is very true. Yeah, definitely. Alex Williams says, do you have any tips so I can speed up my painting a little? I just seem to paint really, really, really slowly, even using an assembly line. Cheers. Part of, and this is not going to make you happy, part of getting faster is just doing it more. The practice, part of getting better at painting is just naturally, as you do it more and more and more, you do actually get faster. There's not a particular trick, but if there was something that was even vaguely kind of a special trick, I would tell you to start looking into 2 things. Number 1 is, how can you skip steps? Like, rather than priming your model and then coloring it, like whatever color it needs to be, can you find a primer that is the color you need it to be? Like, if you're painting ultramarines, rather than spraying them black and then painting them blue, can you find a primer that's blue? You know what I mean? So that can help you shave off steps. I do that all the time now. I constantly try to find a primer that is as close to the color that I want the majority of the model to be, and that helps me and saves a step. The other thing is to just not get so delicate with your models. Like, look at them and go, if I just dry brushed here for my edge highlight instead of actually taking time to edge highlight, it might speed things up a bit. It totally depends on how you want your models to look at the end of the day. If you're looking for very high quality, it will take longer. If you're looking for what's known as tabletop quality, well, then go to town and you can kind of get things done a little bit quicker. But yeah, those are probably my best suggestions for that kind of stuff. So, Masakari says, if BattleTech came back as a fast, action-oriented skirmish game with minis the size and scale of the new 40K Dread or the big Tau suits, do you think $50 per mech is too expensive? $50 per mech. I guess it would depend on how many you would need, in your army. Like if you were playing a game where it was just maybe two, or like a small lance of like three, it's not terrible. But I think that if you're trying to do something where you're trying to get people into the game, expecting them to drop $150 to start is probably kind of tough, which a lot of companies have already noticed. But yeah, that's a tough one. That's a good question. I mean, BattleTech right now technically has, I guess, Alpha Strike, which is supposed to be designed to be kind of a streamlined version of the rules. I've been trying to find it, and I can't. I think they're out of print. I was at Gen Con, and I got there on Sunday. Like, I got to the Catalyst booth. I stopped by finally because I'd been missing it somehow. And they had a bunch of, like, add-ons and, like, extra lances and things like that, but they didn't have any, any of the main starter or whatever, so I guess they're in reprinting on that. So I'd like to try that out. I've partially watched some battle reports here and there, but yeah. Peter Pants is definitely going to get the Shadespire box. So far, every single Age of Sigmar board game, Silver Tower, Gore Chosen, etc., has been great fun. I haven't played Gore Chosen, so I should check that. I should check that out. Is Shadespire better than regular Age of Sigmar Skirmish? It's very different. Regular Age of Sigmar Skirmish is basically just regular Age of Sigmar, but with fewer units and special rules that allow you to use fewer units. And they all kind of just, like, you may have a squad of guys, but they don't have to stay so close to each other. They can kind of spread out and whatever. But Shadespire is a very different game. It doesn't use Age of Sigmar much of anything as far as rules or anything like that. It's very much insular. It's its own thing, and it's played on a board with hexes and stuff like that. So yeah, whereas Age of Sigmar you played on a normal, like, kind of no hex having kind of terrain board like you normally would. So yeah, yeah, that's interesting. But they're very different. But the models are still the same. Not the same. They're still the Bloodbound guys, and they're still the Stormcasts and all that kind of stuff, but they're new sculpts, but they're the right size. They're the same thing. So I believe they've said that they are going to release rules, regular Age of Sigmar War Scrolls for these specific guys that you can then use. And it makes sense. I don't know why you wouldn't, but yeah. Let's see. Is Forge World worth getting rare models? Legion Rapier Quad Heavy Bolter, for example, is Forge. Yeah, well, yeah, if you really want a very specific look to your stuff and you want to go with the special add-ons, like I've had good luck with Forge World add-on stuff, like fancy shoulder pads and fancy doors for rhinos and things like that. I've never bought like a completely Forge World, vehicle. But I have talked to people who have, and sometimes they are sad because those models, that resin can be difficult to put together. Around our local neck of the woods, the joke that we all have is that if someone buys something from Forge World and has a real hard time putting it together, we usually tell them, well, it is for advanced modelers, which means it is warped and difficult to build. So, the add-ons and the little accoutrement, those are fun, and they do make some cool stuff, and they can make your models and whatever it's vehicles or Terminators or whatever you're doing can make them look really cool with the add-on stuff. But the the vehicles themselves, like the entire big like tanks, you get ready to do a lot of sanding and clamping and stuff like that if you're going that direction. It's just part of working with resin, especially big pieces of resin. So yeah. What else have we got here? We've got Blaze asks, so has anyone got any theories as to what the next returning Primarch will be? Being the Wolf player that I am, I hope it's Russ, but I'd love to get Dorn back. Yeah, I don't know that they've really said anything. I mean, I don't know if there's any rumors going around. I mean, Mortarion is the current new guy. Previous to that was, I guess, Magnus, I think. I mean, as far as the bad guys are concerned. Good guys, yeah, I don't know. They haven't really said, but I guess they're probably due now. I think that because have they been alternating basically, where they make like a good guy Primarch, a bad guy Primarch, and go back and forth. I guess I haven't been noticing. I've seen the pictures of the Mortarion model, and as a person who likes to play Nurgle, I don't know. Well, I don't know. Like the sculpt is okay, but the thing is that's interesting is that lately they've been doing this thing that drives me a little nuts. Is that, and it's not the case with Magnus. Well, he's got those big wings, but they've been making some of these models lately that are very difficult. I'm looking at them and I'm like, how am I going to get that to the store? Like, once I've built it and everything, how am I going to travel with that? Even across town. Like, the Celestant Prime, I think he is, for Stormcast, is on this giant sort of, like, spiral of psychic energy, or I don't know what the heck he's on. But he's a big, huge, tall model with, like, a dude at the top riding kind of a weird star tornado. I don't know. I'm like, how am I going to that's going to break in the car, just FYI, you know. And Mortarion's the same type of thing. He's like this big, fat, kind of flying Nurgle dude, and all of the robes and junk that's hanging off of him is basically giving him the illusion of flight. And he's got these big, huge kind of like fly wings, and I'm just looking at him going, kind of a cool model. I'm going to break it at some point. Just, it's going to happen, you know. And so, yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. Like, Magnus doesn't, other than the wings, which look like they could be fragile, he's relatively, grounded, which is nice. Even Big Bobby G, the Roboti Gulaman, whatever his name is, Robot Gorilla Man, he's at least, not like humongous and got giant crazy wings going on and stuff like that. So, yeah. It's difficult. Scott says that he thinks that Dorn is super dead. That's worse than regular dead. That's what I hear. A lot of people are saying the Lion. It looks like he might be coming back. That's what a lot of guesses are here, which is fine. Probably a Primarch matched to one of the December codexes, Dark Angels, Space Wolves, or Blood Angels, according to Elf Tree 42. Could be. I could see that. Would make kind of sense. Mortarion is a really good model with a way too pretty paint job. I have to admit that he should look grungier. Like the pictures that I've seen too, you're right. He should be rusty or something. He's a very clean Mortarion, which I think is weird. Yeah, it's interesting. Dave Rockefeller asks, is there a good historical skirmish game? I have no problem with sci-fi, post-apocalyptic, etc., but one of my friends is not really a big fan of either. He's a history student. Any suggestions? The only one that I really know of that's kind of new and has got really nice models that are plastic and kind of fun and easy to build, from what I understand, is probably Test of Honor, which is made by Warlord Games. They're the same people that do Bolt Action. Bolt Action is also kind of skirmishy, but you're still looking at maybe 20 to 25 models per side, plus including a tank. And so that's World War II Bolt Action. But Test of Honor is samurai kind of Japanese historical, that kind of time frame. So you might look into that as well. And it's a little, like, there's kind of cards that are involved and stuff. It's just a little bit less standard wargamey. So you've kind of got that going if the person's not necessarily super into just like, all right, well, here's all your stats and here's some dice and a tape measure and let's go. You know what I mean? You've got a little bit more of that kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely. I would take a look into either of those. Saga. Oh, yeah, someone here mentioned, Liam just mentioned Saga. Saga is also historical. I don't know if it's ancients. I mean, it's like Visigoths and, Vikings and stuff like that kind of time. And those models, you use whatever kind of models you want. You just have to kind of make sure the scale is right, but there are lots of, you're not buying them from a specific company. There's lots of companies out there. So yeah, there's a lot of different options. Like, the nice thing about Test of Honor is that you can buy a starter box for like $50. It comes with the rules and 2 forces. So it's, if you and just this one friend wanted to get together and play and kind of do that stuff, that might be a good option too. Whereas a lot of other games, they sometimes have a starter box for one side or a starter box, for one faction, but they don't have a 2-player starter box generally. So it might be something to look into. Let's see here. Jocelyn says, having issues working out what a suitable light source for painting would be. I'm using a filament bulb in a lamp at the moment, but it's only unidirectional and has a yellow hue. Well, I like to use generally. I usually use fluorescent these days, though I will probably be eventually switching to LED. But I use fluorescent because it's what I've got. But I like to use anything daylight balanced. I don't like regular incandescent, and in photography terms, tungsten balanced, which is kind of that yellowish color. I don't like to use those generally myself. So I would look for, if it's just a normal lamp that you can screw in a new bulb, I would maybe take a look around, see if you can find yourself a daylight balanced, a nice daylight balanced, bright LED bulb. My wife and I just bought a package of 100-watt equivalent as far as brightness, but they don't use anywhere near that amount of electricity. But 100-watt equivalent daylight balanced LED bulbs from like Costco, and I think we got 10 of them for, I don't know, $20 maybe, and they'll last for a really, really, really long time. So I would look into that if you've just got like a regular lamp that you use. Like I have like a bad overhead lamp. Well, it's not bad, but it's kind of, just coming from above, which kind of gives me some shadows. I need to hook up my other kind of like directional, sort of like on an arm sort of lamp, so I can have two lights going. I just haven't done it. I've just been painting underneath the one lamp, but it works out pretty well. Again, like I said, daylight balanced. That one is fluorescent, those little squirrely compact fluorescent ones. But like I said, yeah, LED is also now the way to go, I think, as far as like saving energy and not having to change the bulb too frequently. Like you pretty much put it in and then you're like, well, that'll be there for 10 years or more. It's really interesting how the technologies have changed, and like I don't know what that's going to do. Like when you're a company that sells light bulbs and your light bulbs no longer burn out after a year, you're going to sell less light bulbs. You know what I mean? Now, admittedly, they're charging more for them, but those prices are going down. Like LED bulbs used to be $30, and now you can get them for about $2 if you look in the right places. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens to the light bulb industry, I guess, is my point. People aren't going to need to buy them as frequently, it seems. Adaptive Caesar asks suggestions for snow bases. I know a lot of people like to use baking soda sometimes. Although if you don't paint it, from what I've been told, it will eventually yellow a bit. I know that Secret Weapon Miniatures makes like a crushed glass that's designed for snow bases, which looks really, really, really nice. It's kind of expensive and maybe a touch fiddly, but it does look really nice. So I would look into that probably. Someone, says, always check the CRI of the bulb, too. Look for something with a CRI better than 80. That's kind of a color reference index, maybe? I just guessed. I have no idea if it is or not. But yeah, CRI is important because it tells you how close to actual daylight it is. The closer to, above 80, basically, is pretty good that way. Yeah, where can I buy cheap airbrushes with compressors? Well, if you've got a Hobby Lobby anywhere near you, that's where I've gotten all my stuff. Hobby Lobby, the upside to Hobby Lobby, one of the only upsides in my opinion, is that they have a coupon on their website pretty much all the time that's 40% off any one non-currently sale priced item. So like I walked into Hobby Lobby and I bought my Iwata Eclipse, which is the HPCS, I believe, Eclipse airbrush, and I bought that, got 40% off, which is pretty good. And then the next day, because it's only one item, the next day I came in and bought the compressor for 40% off. I mean, really, if you wanted to get fancy, if you brought like your significant other or a friend, you could probably get both of them the same day, because they just don't want you to be buying, using the coupon over and over again. But if you and somebody else both use the coupon separately, then it'd be fine. So, yeah, 40% off is pretty nice. If you're looking to get an inexpensive compressor, my first compressor when I bought my first airbrush actually was just a regular like red, like air compressor from the hardware store. I think it cost me $50 or $60. It's loud. It's much louder than an airbrush compressor, but it was very, very cheap and it worked pretty well until it stopped. and then I end up buying a regular compressor. So yeah, that's kind of the way it works. Scrooby asks, "Hey Adam, are you looking forward to the new Death Guard Codex?" I am. I bought the Chaos Codex because right now my only painted army is for 40k at least is Chaos with a Nurgle bent, but also some Khorne in it. So yeah, I've got pretty good hopes, I think, for Death Guard. We'll see. I would like to build a corrupted Imperial Knight and make it Death Guard. So I want to see what the rules like that are for, because if I decide that if they don't put rules in for, what they call, I forget what they call the Chaos Knights, basically. But if Questor, Knight, no, anyway. My thought process is if I don't like those rules, I'll just go back and make it regular Nurgle Chaos, because there's already rules in the regular Chaos Codex for that, for Knights. But I'm hoping there's an actual real Death Guard kind of one. So that might be kind of cool. So we'll see how it goes. What else do we got here? Do you have any advice on how to quickly paint Flesh Eaters? Flesh Eaters. I'm assuming those are like zombies, probably for Age of Sigmar, I think, is the Flesh Eaters. You can go a couple of different directions. You can go with more of a greenish tint, or you can go with more of a pinkish tint, depending, or a pale, hasn't seen the sun in a long time type of tint. If you want to go with more of a vampire kind of look as far as the skin tone, then I would use a lot of, I would mix probably like a Caucasian flesh color of some flavor, probably with like a bleach bone color, and then kind of go from there, do a base of that, then probably like a really pale watered down red wash, and then go back and highlight again with the same kind of fleshy color, but maybe a little bit more on the bone. If you want to go with more of a greenish kind of zombie-ish color, then I would probably just I would use again a Caucasian-ish color if that's the way you want to go with your base skin tone, or you can go with more of a peach color, or you can whatever you want to do, however you want to make your zombies, whatever you want them to be starting as your base color, and then probably just you could even add green wash, like a camo wash. I forget what the heck they call it from Games Workshop. Not carcinogen. I don't know. Some sort of camo shade is what they call it. But you could use a little bit of that mixed in with whatever flesh tone to kind of give it a kind of a sickly hue. That's one option. There are plenty of paint colors out there designed, honestly, just for like zombies and things like that. Pallid Flesh comes to mind. I think it's called Pallid Flesh. Pallid Flesh or Dead Flesh from Vallejo is also a good option too. So, let's see here. What else have we got? We've got Will Ghost Archipelago, which is right over here next to me. Will Ghost Archipelago inspire some hobby and purchases from you, Adam? The Nickstarter begins next week. The Jungle Island palm tree terrain would work in Bolt Action, Blood and Plunder, and Ghost Archipelago. I don't think so, frankly, because I like Frostgrave a lot, and I don't want to I don't want to make a whole new terrain setup. I've been working on building terrain stuff for my Frostgrave, more like kind of ruined buildings that look like they could have been maybe snowy at one point, and kind of switching gears to a whole tropical thing. I kind of just I don't see myself going down that road. It's cool that they've done it, and I if a person doesn't like the concept of Frostgrave but likes the idea of building a terrain board that's more tropical island kind of deserty sort of stuff, that's cool. It's neat that they're giving you that option. But for me, I think I'm gonna probably stick with Frostgrave myself. So, plus I've already got a whole bunch of the models. I mean, I've got the soldiers, I've got the barbarians, the cultists, and now I've got the gnolls. I think the gnolls, the kind of big dog guys. So yeah. J-Tick says Flesh Terrors are Blood Angel second founding chapter. Yeah, that's what I thought too, but he said Flesh Eaters. That's why I was concerned. Like the Flesh Terrors, yeah, I'm familiar with those guys. Flesh Eaters, I don't know if that's a Age of Sigmar thing. But yeah. I want to say it might be part of the Death Army for Age of Sigmar. I know there's like crypt keepers, flesh eaters might be one of those, I think. Six Gunner says that Warhammer TV has a good and easy tutorial for flesh eater ghoul skin. See, that's where Duncan will know, especially if it's one of their type of models. He'll have a good suggestion on how to do it. It's really cool. I really like the fact that they've gotten pretty smart about YouTube, and they crank out like a YouTube video every day, and they're short little, just like, hey, here's a little quick tip on how to do this, and it's really smart on their part. So that's really cool. Lav says, found your channel recently and it's awesome. You give a lot of good and useful advice for beginners. Keep up the good work. Well, thanks. I appreciate it. That's kind of the thing. That's what I'm trying to do, honestly, is to try to bring new people into the hobby. That's really kind of the mission of the whole channel. So I'm not really I'm not like a news site generally, you know, like at Gen Con I didn't really go around and talk to a lot of people about what's going on, you know, like what the new games are. People have asked me a bunch about like, oh, what do you think about Star Wars Legion? And I'm like, well, I kind of watched a bit of a demo, but that was about it. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of channels out there that do it well, and that's great, but I'm trying to get new people in the hobby, so that's kind of where I focus. I think it's best in pretty much any situation, especially when you're making stuff creatively. If you focus in a certain area, whatever it might be, and you kind of stick to that, that really, I think, helps you down the road long term. So that's what I've been doing. I've been sticking to, you know, how do we get new people into the hobby? Plus, I think to some degree, and I hate to say altruistically, but I do think it helps the overall hobby. And it's not just like a good thing for me to focus on to make the channel grow, although it is. It's also just a good thing to help make the hobby grow, because we want more people playing in our hobby, and our hobby is, frankly, a little weird to a lot of people. I mean, not even just the subject matter with the skeletons and the zombies and the, you know, space marines, but with the, wait, so I buy these things and now I have to cut them off of the plastic frames and then glue them all together and then paint them before I can really play with them, you know, properly? They're going to go, well, why don't I just play video games? And that's sometimes a good question, but that's one of the things I'm trying to answer generally on the channel. So George, or possibly Jorge, I apologize, I probably said one of them wrong. Hey, Uncle Adam, what happened to your Glotkin? Is it still in the box and was sad without being assembled and painted? He only wants to spread the joy of Nurgle. It's true, he is still in the box. I actually was just looking at him a couple days ago, because I was looking at what size base he's got. And yeah, right now, I do kind of want to get to the point where I can maybe, he is daunting. He is a big monkey. He's a big character with two other smaller characters riding his back. And yeah, I kind of want to get some other larger projects out of the way. And by larger, I don't mean like a lot of things. I mean physically bigger. One of the things I'm going to show you in the train pictures, which I should probably do real soon, one of those guys is a bigger model. And that, I think, is going to be hopefully something that then leads me to be able to get like Glotkin and some of those, like I want to build an Imperial Knight and go to town like that way. So we'll see how that goes. But what else we got? So actually, I should probably just show you some of those pictures, shouldn't I? Why don't we do that? So like I said, yesterday, I woke up. It was a bright and sunny day, and it was great humidity within the range. Too humid makes spray paint suck. And it was also not too warm, not too cold. Plus it was sunny, which also helps you, like, once you've sprayed a bunch of stuff onto the thing, if you can put the model in the sun, it helps it to dry quicker, and I feel it helps it to cure quicker, but I don't know if that's really actually true. Okay, so we go here. Okay, so this is one of the first pieces that I primed yesterday. I primed it with a gray primer, as you can see. This model is made out of what's known as hard foam. So it's basically like injected, like, foam, like crazy weird super tight cell hard foam. This is from a company called Micro Art Studios from Poland. I bought it from the Cool Mini or Not booth at Adepticon probably 4 years ago. Came in a plastic bag. You'll notice there's this cool bulkhead door here. You can't see that over here. There's this cool bulkhead door here. This is actually a piece of resin that you have to glue on separately, but all the rest of this is basically foam. So the whole model itself is actually quite light. Oop, there we go. The model's quite light, and it's just kind of a cool piece. I'm not exactly sure how I want to paint it yet. It has this sort of like dirt stuff around the edges to kind of give it so it doesn't just go straight down to the tabletop. It's got like a little bit of, so I think also because it's relatively beat up to some degree just as a model. Like there's, this injection molded foam, there's like voids and pits and things like that. So I think I'm going to paint this sort of beat up and make it look very maybe post-apocalyptic or at least abandoned or something along those lines, so I can use it for a couple of different games. I'm trying to decide what I want the color of the ground here to be. Do I want it to be like a sand color? Because I've got a couple different. I've got a mat that's like sand that works out quite nice. It's like a Badlands or something like that, Wastelands mat. And I also have my Realm of Battle board, which is also painted in desert theme, so it might be good for that. Yeah, I think I may go that direction with this, to be honest with you. Let's see. Click. This is another piece of that same hard foam stuff from Micro Art Studios out of Poland. I don't know that they sell either of these pieces anymore, but I think I bought both of these pieces at the same Adepticon. It was back when Adepticon was still in Lombard, and like I said, it might have been 2012. Well, maybe 2013. It was a while ago, and they've been sitting in my basement for quite a good long time. And then all of a sudden, I was like, "All right, fine." And then I just painted them yesterday. Now, normally you should not spray paint pieces of foam. If you use spray can, rattle can on a piece of foam, like pink foam, it'll usually do it. Especially like the white foam with the little kind of balls, inside that make everything up. You will melt the foam. The propellant is what does it. But this stuff had no problem, and I think it's a different type of foam that just doesn't react in that same way. There are some pieces. There's a piece up here and a piece over here. This is like a door here. Up here's like a hatch, and then there's like some sort of air handling unit back here. These three pieces were resin, so you just glued them into the little slot area where they go, and then the rest of the thing is made out of foam, and boom, it was pretty much a quick and easy prime. This I'm going to be painting to not look so beat up because it is it's just in relatively better shape. So I'm just going to make this it looks kind of bluish here, but it's a gray color, and I'm going to just make it a very kind of concrete bunker kind of look, but then make the doors all, metallic in some fashion. So that's where that's at. Again, very light but rigid foam, fun to play with. Now this piece I made at Adepticon. I took a Hearst Arts mold class probably 2-3 years ago. Hearst Arts mold, for those of you guys that don't know, they're these little rubber molds, and you pour dental plaster or something generally. Dental plaster works best. If you use plaster of Paris, it's very delicate. But this was, I think, their fieldstone mold, the ruined fieldstone mold. So basically, I took this seminar about how to build with this stuff and all that, and how to make stuff with the molds, because I own some of the molds and I wanted to learn better how to use them. So then they teach you, oh, this is the type of glue you should use, and blah, blah, blah. And then we got these little pieces of like, well, it wasn't MDF, I found out later. I think it was HDF, because I tried to like it was just like a rectangle, and then we just glued stuff to it. And I'm like, well, I don't want a rectangle underneath my ruins. I want something a little bit more organic. So I started going to town with it with a Dremel, and it was like steel. It was really crazy hard. So it was not medium density foam. It was definitely high density foam, or not foam, fiberboard, sorry. So it was difficult to use, but I did get it relatively rounded and relatively kind of vaguely organic. I added all kinds of texture, and there's some kitty litter over here and stuff like that. And now that it's primed finally, gray, I'm going to paint the walls like rock and the dry brushing and all that stuff. The rest of it's going to be probably very brown, kind of muddish, I think. And then I'm going to put some like grass and some stuff and tufts and things like that in there, and hopefully get that done. But again, this guy's been sitting in my basement for I don't know how long. Well, since I built it at Adepticon, not this year, but several years back. And again, just a really good day, and a wild hair just decided that these things were going to get primed. This is some of the terrain from the Shadow War Armageddon box set, which you can't get the box set anymore because they only had a limited edition of it, as it turns out. But you can still buy this terrain as separate pieces, like not each piece separate, but separate like kits. I forget what they call the new kits, but it's just normal terrain kits that GW sells for $40K now. These are very modular. You can put them together in all kinds of different ways. I primed this all a dark brown. Again, this color skews a little differently, but this was a dark brown. This is part of the Krylon dark brown. And my plan is to go back over with silver, do a lot of silver, but then leave the brown. Like any place where there's like brown that doesn't get hit with silver, it will look like it's kind of rusty and corroded. And then I'm going to go back over and do a lot of like kind of beat up, kind of nasty, sort of like, rusted, corroded kind of stuff. That's what I want to do with this stuff. Fun kits to build, not hard. But yeah, there's all kinds of little walls and extra pieces and junk like that and everything, and the struts and all that stuff. And they're cool. And it's a little hard to get to paint, even with rattle can and all the little nooks and crannies. You've got a lot of little, just like there's spots where it's like, I don't know if I got enough paint in there. But the trick is just to go, well, I'll catch it later when I start painting. You want to lay down a decent base on these things, but it's not completely imperative that every last microcentimeter is covered. So that's kind of the way that works. This is another one of those pieces. I had sprayed the weird tank, which is glued to the bottom here. I had sprayed the weird tank red first, and then kind of got red on the underside of this. And I'd done that weeks ago, actually. But then I was like, well, now I need to paint the rest of it. And I was trying to figure out how I was going to do it. And what I ended up doing is I just took some blue painter's tape and a couple of pieces of copy paper and just made like a paper tube that surrounded the red part, and then I just sprayed everything else in brown. And then when I was done, I just pulled off the stencil, basically. It was pretty simple, I mean, again, and the point where the red meets the brown is going to be underneath, so you don't really notice it. The red stuff is going to be painted again to be kind of rusty and like kind of weather beaten and things like that. And these platforms are again going to be the same sort of silver, kind of corroded metal and that kind of stuff. That's the plan. So again, real quick, simple, just the brown. This stuff at this point I think was the last part of the Krylon, but it might have been moving into the Rust-Oleum. I'm not 100% sure. Last thing is not terrain. This is a Terrorgeist. He is for my Death Army for Age of Sigmar, and I bought him on eBay. He came assembled, which is to say he came in about 6 pieces, and some of them were assembled. He came on a janky rectangular base, which I did not like. So I had to do a bunch of work to get the parts that I wanted off of the base, put them on a round base, go through all that rigmarole, fix him all up, get him back together again, and then I even put texture on the base and all that kind of stuff because I got that base from Games Workshop. Because you can order the big bases directly from them if you want to. Like if you don't have one or whatever. Or if you buy something off of eBay and it comes on an older rectangular base and you're a little anal about it and decide you don't want to have a rectangular base, you want a round base like the new one, the new model comes. Well, he is the same model that you can buy now. But now if you buy a Terrorgeist model, it comes with a round base, which is why I bought the same one. Anywho, it was one of those situations where I was like, he's been sitting again on the table for quite some time. And I had every ambition to airbrush him. But then when it was really nice yesterday, I'm like, he's going to be bone colored anyway. So I used the 2 different kind of khaki sand shades, colors from Krylon. I used the darker one first, and I coated him all with that. And then right along the middle part, like from the tip of his nose all the way down his spine to his tail, I sprayed the lighter color from above, like straight kind of down, just to kind of give him a little bit of a highlight. So you can't really tell it here because he was in a sort of a pretty shadowed area anyway. I was shooting pictures in the garage. But yeah, he's darker brown, or not darker brown, darker tan on the undersides and lighter tan on the top. And I did the same type of thing to the wings and stuff like that. Like I said, this is a pretty high contrast picture, so you can't really tell. But in a normal flat light area, you'll see it a little bit better. But I'm planning on obviously painting over all of this and using it as my base. This is the situation I was talking about before, where to save steps, if you can prime in a base color, you're basically kind of saving yourself a step. That helps to speed things up. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to him getting done. I'm going to try to get his wings to be, I don't know, like the leathery part in between. I did some Vargeists a while back who are mostly gray bodies because they're not skeletal. They're like kind of mostly kind of light gray, sort of sickly bodies, and their wings are kind of a purple, the like leathery part, like a dark purple. And I don't think I'm going to be able to do that with him because it wouldn't make sense. So I don't know. I haven't quite figured out what color the little, like the leathery kind of beat up parts in between his bony wing protrusions are going to be. But I want to figure out soon. But at least now he's primed. You know, he's all ready to go. I think that's all the pictures. So anyway, I'm going to then do this and come back to here and then look at the chat again. There we go. So yeah, Douglas Hooker says, actually foam in compared to resin? Yes. The foam must be less fragile in comparison. The foam it's not too fragile because, like I said, it's this stuff that they call hard foam, and it's a very, very small cellular sort of stuff. And it's, like I said, it's hard. Like you can't just, like a normal piece of like pink insulation foam that you put on the outside of your house and very frequently make, you know, hills and stuff out of for terrain. That stuff, if you squeeze it, this stuff you'd have to really squeeze to actually get it to dent. It's stuff. It's very strong stuff, but it's also light, which is nice. GHRU Reedfield said, what I learned is that foam cannot be melted by spray paint if you put PVA glue on the surface. That's very true. If you coat any kind of styrofoam kind of stuff with something, whether it's PVA glue, watered down PVA glue, even other paint, then you can spray paint it all day long and it's no problem. It's just the propellant straight against the foam will cause the foam very frequently to melt. Adam, how do you do aging or weathering on outside sci-fi terrain elements? One of my favorite tricks for that is to use some stuff from Secret Weapon Miniatures. Secret Weapon Miniatures has a line of washes, which are technically glazes, but he calls them washes because it was a marketing thing. I talked to him about it a couple of years ago at Adepticon, and he said, like, if I would have called them glazes, people wouldn't have bought it because a lot of people don't know what glazes do, so I just call them washes. Anyway, Secret Weapon Miniatures, they make a wash that is a color called, I was just telling somebody about this last night, actually at the shop, parchment. Parchment is the color of the wash from Secret Weapon. When you put that on stuff that's supposed to be sitting outside, especially like things that are metal or stone or anything like that, you put that on there, it makes everything look sun bleached. Like you painted it a certain color. In scale modeling, the people who do like scale modeling, not for gaming, but just for like they want to make a cool looking scale model thing, they refer to it as a filter. And it's basically a coating of stuff that you put over the model that you've painted to make it look kind of like it's been bleached in the sun very frequently. And this parchment stuff makes a very good and easy to use filter. And so I've used it on a bunch of terrain. I did a bunch of Dead Zone terrain a couple of years back, and I wanted that stuff to all look like it was kind of bleached in the sun to some degree. And yeah, just a big wet layer of parchment. Secret Weapon washes parchment over the top really helps to like. And if you do it like with a big fat brush, like a big wash brush, and you do it in lines, then you'll get like almost like, you know, sort of like the grime has streaked down a little bit, and that works out pretty well too. So. Adam, any recommendations for sweet orc building terrain? Got money but no time to make myself. Oh, well, that's the problem. If you've got money but no time, it's a little harder. If you've got time but no money, it's really easy because orcs basically make terrain out of whatever they find. So, you know, when they find a bunch of pieces of metal, they strap it together, and now that's their house. But when you're looking for, I just want to buy orc terrain, I swear there's some MDF kits out there, but I'm not familiar with the companies of who. But I know I've seen stuff before. I'm like, oh, they're making that to be orc stuff. All you got to do is just put some black and white checker border on the top, and it's an orc building. But I can't think of the company. So I'd take a look around for that. There might be some things from Death Ray Designs, MDF buildings that would work that well, or work well for that, for orc stuff. But I can't think of yeah. They just basically have to look haphazard. That's the biggest thing for orcs, as it turns out. So yeah. Let me see here. What else? What's your opinion about Tyranids in the new 40K? I've been hearing that they're pretty good, which is good because they've been not so good for quite some time. From the people that play them, at least, have said that. So yeah, that's good. Let me see here. A bunch of people talking about Fritz. I just heard about this Friday or yesterday. Evidently, there's a channel. There was a guy who had a channel on YouTube, War Warhammer Fritz or Wargamer Fritz. I'm not sure. But his channel sort of disappeared, and according to him, I did a little bit of research, Twitter research, which is frankly the worst kind of research, but it's what I was able to do. He says that they deleted his channel and they said it was for terms and conditions or terms of service violations, which is a sort of standard thing that sometimes that from what I understand YouTube does. This has happened before to other wargamers. If you guys actually think back about 4 years ago, maybe more, gosh, maybe quite a bit more, this happened to Beasts of War. It used to be youtube.com/Beasts of War, and now it's youtube.com The Beasts of War, because the Beasts of War channel got deleted, and they never really found out a great reason why, from what I understand. YouTube kind of is big portions of YouTube are run by bots and not people sometimes. So maybe that's part of it. I don't know. I don't know anything about Wargamer Fritz. I've never really actually watched any of the stuff that he did, so I don't know anything about his content. I don't know what kind of really. I mean, it's wargaming stuff, I'm assuming. And his Twitter is like 40K Fritz, so I'm assuming it's more 40K stuff. But yeah, I don't really know much about him, so I don't know what happened. I just know that a bunch of people, like, I saw some stuff pop up, I think on Friday, in the comments to my Friday video, and then I did a little bit of research and then found out a little bit more. And some, there are people that are unhappy about it because he had fans. So yeah, I mean, it's a bummer, and I don't. The problem is I don't know that there's a great way. Like, you can't like call anybody at YouTube, at least not if you're small like us. Like, if you're some channel that's got 8, 9, 10, 12 million subscribers, you probably have a person or a phone number at least where you can call somebody. But the rest of us, not so much. So I hope it gets figured out. I hope it's maybe like a glitch and they get to bring his stuff back or whatever. But I don't know. Like, Beasts of War had to start over. They had to re-upload 1,000 videos or something at the time. Now they're up over, gosh, because they make, the big channels make a lot of videos, which is great. But at the time, they had maybe 1,000 or 1,200 videos that they had to re-upload, and they said they can only do so many per day because they would only give you the ability to do so many per day. So it took a long time, because it can be really a bummer. It can be kind of devastating. So I hope that that he's able to get his stuff back if it was by mistake and whatever. But I don't know much anything about what's going on with that stuff. I mean, it's nice that you can. It's nice that you can, as a as a channel, have other, outlets. Like you can at least tell people on Twitter if they follow you, this is what happened. Or if you have your own website, you can post things there. Like, I have a website, I don't update it a ton, so I'd be more likely if something was to happen to say stuff on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook and stuff like that. But it's difficult. So yeah, I hope that things get figured out. Gianna says that impudent mortal terrain makes orc terrain. So VJ, you may want to look into something like that. What else we got here? Uncle Adam, any thoughts on the new Song of Ice and Fire tabletop game? See, at first I thought you were going to say Song of Blades and Heroes, and I was like, oh wow, they're making a tabletop game? But he has a tabletop game. But Song of Ice and Fire, that's the Game of Thrones type game from Cool Mini. I know that some people are excited about it. The models do look nice. It's a rank and flank game, so what that means is that you push your guys around on little trays. So you've got, like, instead of having each one separate, like in, say, Age of Sigmar or 40K or Bolt Action or any other kind of game, you push them around in little trays like you used to in Warhammer Fantasy. That's the reason I never played Warhammer Fantasy, because I don't like pushing my guys in trays. I don't know why. I just don't. So yeah, that's why I don't. That's why I'm not super interested. But it's cool that they're going that direction. I know they did a Kickstarter for it. I think they showed it off a little bit at Gen Con, but I didn't actually get a chance. Like, I walked by their booth a couple of times, but I never really went in. Cool Mini. So yeah. What else have we got here? Bladed Lion says, "I love Arch Warhammer. He makes great content and covers so much." I don't know. I don't know who that is. Sorry. I thought it was something else. Um, Kablam says, "If you're a small channel, Uncle Adam, what are channels like mine?" Well, I mean, really, if you think about it, within tabletop wargaming, the biggest channel in tabletop wargaming is Mini Wargaming, and they're like at 265,000 subscribers, which in the realm of just overall YouTube is tiny. Like, there are like one-man operations that play like a single video game. Like, there's a channel that I watch sometimes, just because I like the guy. He plays with a friend, and I just like the interaction between them. They're sometimes funny. Sir Winter, and they play Rust, which I played a couple of times and did not particularly enjoy, but sometimes I like to watch. And it's mostly just because these two guys are funny. So I watch his videos from time to time. He's like one dude in Australia making these videos out of his bedroom with his friend who lives someplace else. He's American, though, but I don't think he lives in America currently. Anyway, long story short, they've got like 250,000 subscribers, and they play one game that not a ton of people play, and that's all they do. And they're considered very small by video game standards when you've got like huge channels that are 1 million, 2 million, 5 million. I mean, technically, from what I understand, PewDiePie started off as a video game channel, and he's 58 million or something like that. So the entire wargaming YouTube, species, we're very small potatoes, really. So yeah, I'm a small channel in YouTube terms. Like, I'm like a video game channel of a guy who's not trying very hard. Like, if I decided to start making video game stuff, I would probably get a lot bigger, but I don't want to go that direction. So yeah, I don't know. But so yeah, amongst wargaming YouTubers, I have a bigger channel to some degree, which is nice. I'm mid-sized. But amongst, the rest of the world in YouTube, all of us, are very small. So Keith Miller says, "Adam, I'm assembling some bolt action guys, and it's taking me at least 30 minutes per model to assemble. Is that longer than normal? Any thoughts on how to speed up assembly?" It's not necessarily any. I mean, it depends. Like, I like to be very sure that I'm getting rid of all the mold lines and I'm, doing everything well. So sometimes it takes me a long time to put guys together. I don't know about bolt action. Bolt action is mostly metal from what I understand. So that might take longer sometimes for the glue, like you want to be sure. Plus, sometimes it's harder to get mold lines off with metal and things like that. So, if you spend the time up front, then they'll look great forever. Whereas if you quickly slap them together, might look like garbage forever, So don't worry too much about the time you spend on putting the models together sometimes, unless you're doing it like if you're like a commission painter and you have to crank out a whole bunch and stuff. If you spend tons and tons and tons of time, then your per hour wage is worse. So yeah, but I don't think. I mean, if you can get it down to 20 minutes per model, you might be better off. But I don't know. Yeah. Let's see here. What else have we got here? What else have we got? Thinking of channels, the largest Magic the Gathering channel is 250K subs, for instance. Really? See, I thought there were bigger ones for Magic the Gathering. See, because amongst tabletop gaming, there are 4 genres. And anyway, so you've got board gaming, you've got collectible card games, you've got RPGs, and then you've got wargaming. Of those 4 genres, I would say wargaming is probably the smallest. Currently, probably board gaming is the biggest. There's tons and tons and tons of big channels out there for board gaming. And I'm not even talking about just channels, I'm just talking about the amount of stuff bought. Amongst the 4 different genres, board gaming is the largest. Just being at Gen Con shows you that. There's tons and tons and tons of board gaming out there. I don't know which is the next. I don't know if RPGs or CCGs are the next in that kind of hierarchy. I mean, it depends, I guess, on if you're talking about how many people play or versus how much money is made. If it's money that's made, I would say probably maybe CCGs, even though really, like, Magic is like the big CCG. There's also a couple other ones here and there. There's Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Dragon Ball Z and stuff like that. But a lot of people aren't doing CCGs as companies anymore because it's very expensive and all that stuff. So it might be RPGs. I don't know, frankly, about which one's bigger amongst those two. But board gaming is definitely the top. Then there's, in my mind at least, let's say a tie between CCGs and RPGs, and then there's us, the lowly wargamers, who are kind of down below in that as far as volume and that kind of stuff. So it's interesting, yeah. Mateo asks, "Are you in your living room currently?" No, this is the dining room. That's a hutch. Hey, Uncle Adam, before picking up a new war game, is one of your considerations whether it's likely to stay around? For me, sometimes, looking at it and saying, is this something that's going to be around? Yeah. There's other times when I look at it and go, well, even if it crashes and burns, I've still got cool models, which I could use in other games maybe. Sometimes that's also a consideration. It depends. It depends on how, not modular, how kind of proprietary, I guess, the models are. Like if it's a very specific type of model that's just for their game and I can't think of another use for it in any other game, then I have to really think about, like, is this game going to take off? Is this game going to be something that people are going to play? And if I think no, then I'm less likely, to buy it, because I'm like, well, I can't really use these models for any other kind of game, These weird robot snakes. What am I going to use robot snakes for? I just made that up. But, like, what am I going to use robot snakes for in any other game? Whereas if it's like, well, that guy's like a spaceman, or that guy's like a post-apocalyptic dude, or this guy's like a general fantasy person, you can use those in all kinds of other games. So that's kind of a benefit. But you do have to think about it, because especially, like if you're going to be trying to play games with people you don't know and get into games at the shop, then you have to figure out what's being played at the shop. If you and your friend are just going to sit down and play some cool game and it's just the two of you, or maybe just a group of four of you or whatever, then you can play whatever you want. And even if the game goes out of business, whatever. It's not like video games where, like, well, we shut down the servers and now I can't play multiplayer anymore. It's, you can play games from 40 years ago, and there are still people who are doing it. There are still people who are playing, like, historical games from years and years and years ago. There's probably still people playing the original Chainmail, from back in the early days of Gen Con and the early days of Dungeons and Dragons. There's no reason not to. Like, you can keep playing whatever you want to play. If they decide to move on and move to a new version and you don't like version 12 of the game, you can go back to playing version 9 or whatever, and no one can stop you. As long as you have a group to play with, you can. So that's kind of a benefit. Let's see. What else have we got? Jorge says, still no googly eyes. No, I know. I think the cello case back there still does not. I should put a hat maybe on the cello case, though. That might be kind of fun. Hoth Rebel 86 says, do you like miniature model train sets? I had a friend when I was a kid growing up who, his dad was really big into miniature model train sets, and they had this huge train board in the basement. But I never, I've never gotten into trains, though. I mean, like, I look at a lot of stuff now as I go back and go, oh, that's really interesting. Like, there's a lot of, like, there can be some craft and stuff like that. Although, from what I understand, a lot of trains, like, you buy them and they're already pre-painted. You know what I mean? And even some of the terrain, like the buildings and things, like, a lot of those are also pre-painted. So it's more about putting it all together into, like, a big thing. But I don't know. Just the actual concept of just driving trains around, to me, that's never struck my fancy, I don't think. What else have we got? Matthew's asking, when does Robot Snakes come out? I'd play that. Well, I'll think about it, maybe. Uncle Adam, any idea on the PVA glue plus back... oh, okay, I see what you're saying here. Any idea on the PVA glue and baking powder basing tutorial? Well, it's not PVA glue. That's part of the trick. I'm going to make this tutorial soon, and it is how I generally do my basing. And I use baking soda and CA glue, so basically super glue. Those two things are what I And I don't mix them together and then try to make a base. That does not work because that will just immediately harden in whatever you're trying to mix, and then that's no fun. I just put CA glue all over the base of the model, trying not to get it on the model's feet and stuff like that or whatever. And then I sprinkle baking soda onto the CA glue, and as soon as it touches it, it acts as a catalyst and it starts to kind of harden the glue very quickly, and it makes a very fine texture, much finer than sand. Works great for trying to make it look like sand, because sand, if the model is standing on actual sand, it's not going to look like sand. It's going to look like they're standing on gravel. If you want them to look like they're standing on gravel, use sand or salt. But if you want them to look on like they're standing on something that's very, very fine, like sand would be in comparison to the height of a person, then you want to use something like baking soda on the CA glue. Or if you're trying to do like ash, like an ash wasteland kind of look for your model on their bases, you can use that stuff too. It works out pretty well. But yeah, I had someone ask me just recently. They're like, "Well, I tried to mix it together and then spread it on the base, but I got all." I'm like, "Yeah, you can't. You have to put the glue on the base and then sprinkle, and then you'll go from there." Ben asks, "Has anyone else gotten the push fit Reavers? I picked up 2 boxes. They're kind of fun to put together." I've seen the push fit Reavers boxes at the store, but I have not bought any. I don't know that I like the models. They're okay. I like their masks. I like the kind of the skull masks. I think those are sort of cool. I just don't know. I have to look at their stats. I don't know if I'm gonna like. I don't know. Right now, my Imperial army is like once I get the repulsor built, my 1,500 point army is ready to go. I mean, I need to paint them all, but I've got everything I need for my. They're basically going to be a made up Ultramarine chapter or Ultramarine successors, I guess. But that's ready to go, 1,500 points. If I want to then go to 2,000, which eventually probably I will, then I'll think about stuff to add. But for right now, my 1,500 point list is basically, like I said, once the repulsor is finished, which the repulsor has a lot of parts on it, a lot of guns, a lot of repulsory units on the bottom, and each one of them is 2 pieces, and it takes a long time to build. But once that's done, then that list is actually ready to go, and I can start painting and then play hopefully very soon. So that's cool. But yeah, I'm not sure about the Reavers. Matthew Sears says that a conductor hat would be a good look for me. It would have to be a big one. I've got a big head. Like, the reason that I can wear a fez is because they make fezes big enough. But otherwise, like a normal fez would look like a toy one on top of my head. Todd Harris asks, speaking of terrain, what are your thoughts on papercraft terrain? I think if you're just getting into terrain and you want to start with something like that, I think you can do some kind of cool stuff with it. It's nice that it's usually already colored. Like if you're going to print it out on like a laser printer, like you got a color laser printer or a color like inkjet maybe. Although inkjet's not going to be as like glue. I would think maybe would make the colors run a little bit, but if you want to go down that direction, you can do some cool stuff. I've seen people do amazing papercraft terrain that when I look at it, I think to myself, that probably took almost as much time as if they would have just built regular terrain and painted it. Like when they get really fancy. If you just print something out and kind of, tab A and the slot B kind of thing and get it all ready to go, that doesn't take a ton of time. But when they like coat the stuff with like some sort of spray varnish and go through all these different, to make it very durable papercraft terrain, then, then basically your hope, at least my hope, is that they're doing it so that it folds flat and it's easy to store or easy to travel with, which makes sense. But if they're just doing it because they think that it's easier and cheaper, by the time they go through all that work, it's certainly probably not particularly easier. Maybe a little bit easier, but not a lot. I don't see a lot of companies that do it. I see some, I know that that's partially just because, they're usually downloads, so you don't go into a store and see papercraft terrain. You normally have to go online and look for certain websites to do that, but that kind of thing, I can see that. Euzikius, I can't pronounce that. That's a made-up word, I think, unless it's your real name, then I apologize. Asks, what are your thoughts on the new Mortarion miniature? Well, I was talking about that earlier. He looks like I'm going to break him. He looks like just trying to get him from my house to the store after I've put him together and spent a bunch of time painting on him. He looks fragile, just like a lot of the GW stuff these days, especially like stuff that like Nagash looks fragile. The Glotkin doesn't. Glotkin, he's thick, he's put together. But a lot of those guys, Celestin Prime, a lot of those guys look like I'm going to break them trying to get them from point A to point B. Also, we were talking a bit earlier about Mortarion, about how the paint job that they've done on him so far that they're showing off in the pictures looks surprisingly clean, which for, like, basically the overlord of plagues ought to really probably look a little, he should be grungy, but he doesn't seem to be, so. Mr. Pilgrim says if you paint the baking soda green and add some shades to it, it can also look like Lustrian undergrowth. All right, yep, I can see that, definitely. Zombie Boy says with regards... Oh, dang it. Hang on, let me scroll up. With regards to the Friday video, played 40k yesterday, and my newly painted Ultramarines looked great. My opposition's Gray Plastic Chaos did not. Gray minis against painted scenery is very dull. Evidently, painted video... people like to say that painted models shoot better or fight better. I don't know if that's actually true, but I like it better, certainly. Uncle Adam, how do you feel about the upcoming Necromunda set? Will you get one? I don't know that I'll get one. I'm not... I know a lot of people are really excited for the gangs to come back for Necromunda. Maybe. I'm not super excited in that. I don't know. Like, I was never... Like, that was the one part of the original Necromunda. I used to really enjoy the Necromunda, but the gangs, I don't know, for some reason just didn't ever strike me. These new models look great, but they just never quite struck me. But the fact that it's... I don't know. I'm not sure. When I started seeing that it came with, like, board pieces and it was supposed to be played kind of two-dimensionally, I was like, well, that's not cool. But then they said, well, but you could also play it three-dimensionally if you want to, like on normal stuff. It's cool that they're giving you both options, that they're giving you the flat one versus the three-dimensional one. That's cool. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what the rules look like. Again, Shadow War is basically using the old Necromunda rules, which I always enjoyed, with pinning and all that kind of cool stuff, and weapons malfunctions and all that. Running on ammo, whatever they call it now. Ammo check, I think. But, yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they do with now taking the 8th edition rules and trying to modify it to make it work for Necromunda. We'll see how it goes. It's supposed to be coming out in November, evidently, so we don't have that long to wait, as it turns out. If you used a primer of a certain color, let's say gold, and you want to turn back to a white primer, can you do it? Gold primer tend to make paint look really dark. I've never seen a gold primer. I mean, there's gold spray paint that you can put on, well, it's not exactly a primer, but it can act as a primer, but it's harder to paint over it, you're right. The best bet is if you've got, like, parts you want to keep gold, but then other parts you don't want to keep gold, you could use a brush-on, like, white primer, let's say, in that situation. Reaper makes a brush-on white primer and a brush-on black primer. I don't know if Vallejo does, but I know Reaper does. I use the Reaper ones myself. Like, I will, paint some model, I'll prime it and base coat it all one color, and then, like, the person needs to have, like, a head with skin on it and stuff like that. And let's say you painted the guy bright red or bright blue, you don't want to paint your flesh color, let's say, directly over that. So then what I usually do is then I throw down a layer of black or white brush-on primer, depending on the skin color of the person, and then work off of that, because it helps to get rid of that color, sort of, that you've already sprayed the model. So that might be a way to go. VJ Morph says, I thought that proper 40k factions in Shadow War Armageddon was way better. I like that too. I really do. But it's personal opinion. I'm glad that there are people out there that are going to be happy that they get new Ganger models and Eschers and Goliaths and all that cool stuff. Because I know a lot of people do like that stuff. So it's cool that they did that. But it's not exactly for me, I don't think. Dylan asks, I've wanted to try glazing over a 3-color Vallejo metal color Zenithal Prime to try for an old school religious painting look. Like an icon, kind of like a Russian icon maybe? That'd be kind of interesting. So you're using 3 colors metallics and Zenithal highlight and then using glazes over the top. That'd be interesting. That would be almost trippy a little bit, It would almost be like like a gold leaf like painting or something like that. That would be kind of cool. Yeah, it would be interesting to see. Paul Noxie says, yeah, I'm not sure why Necromunda came back when Shadow War is pretty much Necromunda. I was also still a little confused by that, and I still am currently. But, and it's not like, I really don't believe, not even for a minute, that Shadow War came out, and then they went, wow, that was really super popular, and we sold out all those kits. Let's make Necromunda. Both of those things were planned a long time ago, and so like just making the models, the gangers, that's not something they decided to start just doing like in April. You know what I mean? Like when they first released Shadow War, it wasn't like, oh geez, well that went really well. Maybe we should bring the gangers back. The amount of work that goes into making those models, just the 3D design and then making the molds and the testing and all that stuff, that takes like at least a year, if not longer, I'm sure. So yeah, this was evidently a plan they've probably had for quite some time, which is interesting to me. But there it is. Let's see. The Wah Production says, I'm painting a Stampa for my 5 Stampa detachment. Sorry for being a power gamer. Well, yeah, that's kind of the definition of it, I think. I don't know that I'd be able to play against the 5 Stampa detachment. I don't know what I would do against it. So, Martin asks, Adam, have you ever entered Armies on Parade? Do they have it in the U.S. or is it just UK-based? I believe they have it in the U.S., I don't live anywhere near a GW store. Like the closest Games Workshop store to me is it's probably about 100 miles away. It's down in the Milwaukee area, 90 to 100. But so I don't really know. I don't know a ton about it. I know some people, if they're still here watching, I know some of those people know about it, but I don't know a ton about it. So I've never entered anything. No, I've never entered any painting contest ever. Yeah, I guess I don't do it for that, and also I don't think I'm particularly very good. So that's the where I'm at. I like to make stuff that works out well on the tabletop, and that's about as far as I get. Mateo asks, what do you think are the differences between bolt action and the big Games Workshop games like Age of Sigmar and 40K? Which one would you play if they had the same popularity? Well, obviously storyline, I mean, one is a historical World War II game, and then one is sci-fi, and one is, high fantasy kind of stuff. So it depends if you, like, if they were all just as popular and you could walk into any given game store and have equal chances to play any of those three that you mentioned, then it would come down to, in my mind, like it always does, actually, for me, well, what models do you like? You know what I mean? Like, if you like sci-fi, well, then you're going to go with 40K. If you like historical and you really want to paint a Sherman tank or a Stug or something like that, well, then you would want to go definitely with, like bolt action. So it does really depend on, like, what, for me, the look of the models is one of the most important things. I almost never look at a model and go, well, I should really get this for my army because it's really powerful. If it turns out that that thing is powerful, but I also really like the look of it, then I feel like well, two birds, one stone. This has worked out quite well for me. But in general, I don't ever really go, well, I generally base my stuff off of what I like as far as that's concerned. Midwesterners are never probably going to say Vallejo correctly. I probably have been saying it wrong this whole time. It's just the way I've been saying it. I probably am pronouncing something wrong. I apologize. Let's see here. Volzun says, currently working on my Frostgrave Wizard using the Games Workshop Empire Battle Wizard pack. Huh. Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. There's a vial with a skull-shaped smoke coming out of it. Any advice for painting smoke? Painter Sam, who will be coming back to the channel soon, is very soon. I've been saying that for a while, but it's going to happen. We were just texting, actually, Friday? I think Friday. He did a video on my channel a while back about object source lighting, and that uses smoke from the Auric Shaman, I believe. You might want to watch that video. He's got some cool effects in there and kind of shows some stuff. The other way is, frankly, just to look at how other people paint smoke in models, in miniatures, and then try to, like, copy it to some degree, I think. Because it's hard. It's not something that you have experience with. Like, what a person looks like when they wear a red coat. But smoke in three-dimensional hard plastic or metal is not the way smoke looks to us normally, so it's kind of done a little cartoony. which means you don't have a great frame of reference on how to paint it, at least in my opinion. So what I generally do in those situations is that I go look at how other people painted it, and I go, oh, okay, cool. And then maybe I either try to copy it directly, or I get close, or I do something like what they did, but I change it myself a little bit. Those are my best pieces of advice, I guess, for that type of thing. Let's see here. Justin Hamrick says, I've got to run, but wanted to say thanks for the info and love the channel. Well, thank you, Justin. You have Dexter's Laboratory icon as your thing, and I haven't watched that show in a long time, but we used to watch it all the time. It was funny. Mac Bran asks, what do you think of Epic 40K, and have you ever played it? I have never played it, so I don't have any good ideas about it. I know what it is, roughly, somewhat, but I've never played. I know that they're kind of, sort of bringing on that. I don't think they're bringing back Epic specifically. They're going to probably come out with a board game that will be kind of Epic scale that I think is going to be called Titanicus something or others. Yeah, so I don't have any great insight onto Epic 40K, but I know that there are a lot of people out there who still are big fans, or at least there are some people out there who are big fans. Total Noob says, if you like both historical World War II and sci-fi, you can add Conflict 47 to your bolt action. That is true. Conflict 47 is alternate history, kind of sci-fi sort of almost, World War II. But the models are pretty much compatible. Like, you can build a Sherman tank, and then if you want to play bolt action with it, you just swap the turret. And you put the normal historical turret on it, but when you want to play Conflict 47, then you put the crazy plasma cannon turret on it instead. And you've got guys in your army that have like power armor and like almost like a mech, like a walking tank. But you still got to have some guys with Tommy guns. Like not everybody gets the laser pistol. Some people have just carried Tommy guns because the rest of that stuff is probably expensive. So. Yeah, Conflict 47 is cool, especially if you're interested in playing both. Paul Noxie says, Sam Lenz is ridiculously good. LOL. That is true. He is ridiculously good. He's amazingly fast, too. That's the crazy part, is that he's really, really good and fast, which I'm going to be making a video about that soon, too, is that's one of the benefits as you get better, kind of, and someone was asking about this before, there's just sort of a side benefit that you get where you just get faster generally too. Like you get to a point where you're like, my painting is not particularly getting that much better, but I'm able to get through stuff quicker, which has got its own kind of reward to some degree, because you're like, well, because now you look at like, oh man, I got to paint 10 guys, and you think to yourself, I'll paint 10 guys, because you're going to go through them quicker than you used to. It's when you're first starting out and you know that it takes you forever on every single guy. As you keep painting and you keep powering through it, eventually you start cranking through stuff quicker. So I've found that now. I look at, like I was talking about before, I've got these models for my 1,500 point Imperial list for 40K. It's a total of 29 models. One of them is already completely painted because it's a vehicle, or it's a flyer that I did years ago. So it's 28 models. One of them is a vehicle, the repulsor tank. But the rest of them are all people. And I'm looking at that number and I'm not scared, because I'm like, I know how quickly I can kind of go through them, especially if I assembly line them and go that direction. And again, I'm not trying to make each one, a masterpiece. I'm trying to get them on the tabletop. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. But I've found now that the bigger numbers don't scare me as much, because as I've been getting better, I've actually been getting faster. That's just part of it. Miniatures Assemble asks, have you tried adding anything additional to your miniatures, like stuff like gun smoke or blasts from cannons? I actually really don't like those things. There was a company that they're still around, I think, Armorcast, that made like weapon effects that you could buy and then glue on to to give like muzzle blasts to your guns and stuff like that. And I've just never liked that look. I don't know why. I really don't like. Games Workshop has been doing a thing from time to time lately now where they have they'll model the smoke in, and like I was talking a couple of minutes ago, like the smoke from that orc shaman is really cool, and that's one of the best pieces they've done. But like they put a bunch of smoke on a lot of the new Death Guard guys, like that came in even in the Dark Imperium box. There's like smoke coming out of like incense sensors or whatever, and that kind of junk. And I just don't like the look of it. I wish they would stop it. But it's just my personal opinion. Other people like it and can paint it well. I look at it and go, is there a way I can shave that smoke off? Because I just don't want it. You know what I mean? I don't know why. I just so I'm not the guy who's going to add special add-ons to make it look like guns are firing and stuff like that, because I just don't like it. Just because you're painting it, and that stuff shouldn't be. It should be transparent. So, and you can't make it be transparent. You know what I mean, with paint. So it's not going to happen. Like if they made those things out of plastic, and then you could just color it a little bit. Now that might be something. Like if they made like muzzle flash, little pieces of muzzle flash that were made out of like a yellow transparent plastic, and then you could throw some glazes on it to make it a little bit orangey and red. That might be something. Somebody out there do that and let me know. You can send me some for free. It'd be nice. Todd Harris says, just got some minis from Night Models. I hate the fact that they're very fiddly. Have you ever assembled any? Personally not pleased with them. Night Models, I think they're the DC guys, like the guys who make the Batman game and stuff, and they make some other stuff as well. I've never messed with any of the Night Models stuff, so no, I don't know. I know that they did like a line of Star Wars models. They did a line of a bunch of different like licensed stuff, and from what I understand, they're great models. But yeah, I bet they're fiddly. That does not surprise me at all. Rambo Jambo asks, I'm trying to get my friends to join me in playing Age of Sigmar. Do you have any advice in convincing them? Look into Skirmish, and then maybe paint 2 Skirmish armies. And then say, hey, you want to play? You can use this army. Because if you say, hey, you want to play with me? Go out and buy some stuff and this and that and build it and all that. That's a hard hump to get over, frankly, for getting people into the hobby. But if you can... And Skirmish, the reason I'm saying to do it Skirmish is because then it's less painting on your end, less painting and building. If you can put together 2 Skirmish armies for something like Age of Sigmar Skirmish, they're going to learn the rules because it uses basically the normal rules for Age of Sigmar. They're going to have the models because you're going to paint them and give them to them, not give them, but loan them to them so they can use them during the game. And then maybe they start to really enjoy it and messing around with the models and moving around and doing stuff. And then they start thinking, I could buy some models. And then we could start playing Age of Sigmar Skirmish. And then eventually maybe they have a full army for regular Age of Sigmar down the road. And there you go. You've got another convert. That's kind of honestly part of the reason that I think that they've made games like Age of Sigmar Skirmish is to get... It used to be Games Workshop had 2 main games, and the only real good way to get into them was to climb that wall and then finally get to the plateau where now you've built yourself a 1,500-point army and you've spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and not to mention how many hours painting and all that kind of stuff. And now they're like, well, we need to find out a bunch of other ways to get people into the hobby. And so they went with some of the board games, starting obviously with things like Space Hulk, even though they've been making Space Hulk for years, but the re-release of it was a smart idea. Games like Gore Chosen, games like, coming soon with Shadespire, all this kind of stuff. Games like Sigmar are designed, like Age of Sigmar is designed to be an easy game to get into, and then they made Age of Sigmar Skirmish, which is even easier because you need even fewer models. It's just a smart idea, and I like that they've been doing it because I think it's good for the overall industry, it seems, so that's good. VJ Morph says, yeah, not a fan of projectile smoke extras on models. Not a fan of OSL either, personally. I like OSL that's done well. I do. I think if it's really over the top, then it kind of is like a little bit too much for me, but I think by definition, when something's over the top, it's a bit too much. Yeah, so... Thordalium says, maybe a Shapeways idea to make the muzzle flashes. Ooh, that's a good point, because some of their higher-end plastics are translucent. Not transparent specifically, but translucent. That is a good idea. Well, see if somebody can come up with a really cool muzzle flash shape, then maybe we can grab some from... we could grab some from... that could be kind of cool. Sam Hinchy says, I hate smoke too. I'm assuming you're talking about smoke in the models as opposed to just smoke in general. You don't want smoke to get in your eyes. There's that. Douglas says, Andy Zach churns through models. Check out his contributions on Bolt Action and Spectre Games Facebook pages. Not only is he good, but he probably did it all in an afternoon. Like I said, that seems to be like The idea is that, well, as I get better, I'll just keep getting better and better and better and better and better. But you seem to hit a plateau at some point where you're no longer getting necessarily better, as like this paint job looks the same as this paint job, like even though they're, they're like a year apart. It's just that this most recent paint job might have taken you half the time of this previous one, because you get to a point where your quality doesn't get much better, but you get faster, and then you have to go that way for a while, and then eventually, hopefully, then you go up to the next level again. But very frequently, humping up to that next level has a tendency maybe sometimes to slow you down, because then you're getting into all kinds of things like pigments and like oil washes and all kinds of crazy shenanigans like that, and that can slow you down just because it's technical issues, frankly. So Todd Harris says, neither do I. It takes away from the miniature. I should probably start a poll. Maybe I'll do that on Facebook or something and say, do you like all those extra effects? Because maybe then some of the companies will read that and go, oh gosh, we should stop doing that. That might be kind of cool. Or maybe we'll find out that those of us who are saying here we don't like it are the weird few who do not like it, and everybody else loves it. I don't know. Hard to say. Todd Harris asks, what do you think of clear bases for miniatures? I like basing. I enjoy creating a tiny little story with the base. That being said, I can see some of the benefit to the clear bases, because then, if you've based your guys to be on a sandy base or an urban wasteland base, but you're playing on a green grass kind of, terrain board, it looks weird. Like, why are all those bricks, and why is there like a bent stop sign sticking out of that guy's base? You're here in the forest, that kind of thing. I can see that. But I still do kind of generally like basing a lot, so I probably wouldn't go that direction. But I am seeing more and more people who are doing that, where they're just painting the model and then gluing it, probably with plastic cement, I assume, but gluing it directly to like a clear round base. The reason I say plastic cement is because super glue, aka CA glue, cyanoacrylate, for those of you who are paying attention, that stuff, as it dries, it gives off fumes, and it will cloud clear plastic. So you don't want to use, like if you're gluing like a canopy, like windows, into some sort of flying spaceship or whatever, or a World War II bomber or something like that, if you use CA glue, it will cloud the inside of the windows very frequently as it dries. So you want to use plastic cement, because it won't. So I'm assuming the people who are putting these models onto those clear plastic bases, I don't know where they're getting the clear plastic bases from, but they're getting them from somewhere. Someone must be making them. But they're doing that, and then they must be using plastic cement, because otherwise I would think you would cloud the base. It's a cool concept. I just still like the act of actually basing, because I just, like I said, I like making the little story sometimes. Even if it's just like, well, there's some rocks over here and a little tuft of grass. I still like doing that. Papala says, where did Pachow come from? I don't know, frankly. I wanted to point out where the little thing, that pops up here generally is. I wanted to be like, and it's, there you go. And I just said Pachow. I don't know that I said Kapow early on and then changed it, or if I just said Pachow, but I did. And now it's a thing. I might make a Pachow t-shirt. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, so it's just a thing, and things happen. Like this show, the live show, the first 5 minutes is usually me telling you like what the weather is around like here, and you telling me where you're saying hello from, Taiwan and Germany and that kind of stuff. It just sort of happened that way. And it's cool and it's fun. And then I answer questions, and then eventually I usually talk about the subject, which I've already done in this video for a little bit. And usually while I talk about the subject, the rest of you chat on in the chat area and talk about whatever. And then I come back and then I read the chat and answer and stuff like that. So it's just the way that the show has sort of evolved, and that's cool. And it's as if you do stuff long enough, eventually you get into patterns. It's just the way it works. It's the way it works with painting as well. See how I brought that back there? Hi, Adam. I was wondering if you ever work in 15 scale for sci-fi. No, I haven't. I know that 15 millimeter scale for sci-fi started to get popular probably 4 or 5 years ago. I've never really ventured into that scale. I don't really know any of the games very well that work with it. So yeah, it's just not. One of the reasons I like 28 millimeters because I like painting, you know, a little bit more detail. Whereas when you're painting 15 millimeter, it's very difficult to do a face, or at least it's very difficult to do it well, you know. And not that my faces are great on my 28 millimeter guys, but they're, you know, the idea is that with 15 millimeter, and specifically like when you get into like bolt action, or not bolt action, sorry, Flames of War, like those guys are 15/20 millimeter, and you're just supposed to be like, okay, his face is face colored and his pants are pants colored, and you just sort of kind of glop it on there real quick and don't do a lot of detail, and for infantry models at least. And I don't know, I like to have a little bit more detail, so that's why I kind of stay away from that scale myself. But it's cool that they do, you know. Most often than not, also, those games have a tendency to be sort of, to some degree, rank and flank, in that you're moving a stand of guys. You're not just moving each guy separately, because that would be really fiddly, you know, because they're so small. So, what does shenanigan mean, and how is it spelled? Shenanigans is SHEN. I think there's an I. Shenan. Again, that's at the end of my normal videos, it says shenanigans, and I can't spell it off the top of my head. But yeah, shenanigans are generally, you know, goofing around, you know, potentially mischievous actions, that kind of stuff. So yeah. Todd Harris's Litco, which I believe is the answer to who makes the clear bases, because that makes sense to me. Litco is a company that does a lot of acrylic stuff. They do a lot of laser cut acrylic everything, you know, tokens and all kinds of junk. Well, not junk, but you know, they do a lot of stuff. So that would totally make sense why that Litco would be making the clear bases. I could get that. Douglas Hooker says, I love basing. Clear bases only work if you have awesome terrain and awesome mats. If your terrain is low budget, you still can tell a story and hopefully looking high quality on your base. Yeah, I can see that. Siri says, let's see her shirt would be much better. I see what you did there, Siri. Miniatures Assemble, by the way. Hello from northeast suburban Detroit area. I'm actually on my channel account, so I'm working on videos for my account. The name suggests assembling minis, mainly Battletech for now. Well, that's fun. Michael Strickler says, I'm back for the last 5 minutes. Hope I didn't miss anything. Just me talking, so not necessarily a bunch. CY 2087 has, I believe, properly spelled shenanigans, I think. Morph Fiend says, by the way, Adam, whenever your build tack gives out on your MP Ultimate... Oh, this is a 3D printing thing. Gotcha. Build tack, I think, is the base part that the actual printing happens on. Whenever your build tack gives out on your MP Ultimate, I would highly suggest going glass with PEI. I don't know what PEI stands, but I know glass. I know what that means. Works wonders for your first layer adhesion and to get a mirror finish. Okay, so like what I've got on the printer that I've got, which I showed you a little bit of in that video that I did a couple weeks back, or maybe a month back, the printer base itself is heated, but it's got like just basically like a piece of, I don't know what the heck, it's kind of like plastic and stuff like that, but it's a metal base with this plastic sticky stuff to it, which they gave me several extra ones in the box too. But I've been seeing, because I've gotten onto a Facebook group of people who own that same printer, and they talk about all the modifications they make and all that kind of stuff. And one is about getting a different plate that's heated, but it's glass instead of this metal with the plastic stuck to it. So yeah, the bottom piece is smoother then, because it's just a smoother piece of glass. So I'll look into that. But yeah, that's kind of interesting. I haven't really thought about making any modifications yet to my printer, but I know there's tons of things out there you can do. So, let's see here. See, just said it again. It could be a T-shirt. Only like nobody would get it except for the people who watch the live show. So there's that. Hoth Rebel asks, would you want a Warhammer movie, or would it just spoil your imagination? I would kind of like a Warhammer, movie. if any of you have ever played the original Dawn of War video game, the intro for the first Dawn of War video game was spectacular, and I would love to watch a 2-hour version of that. It was just crazy. Like, even the one for Dawn of War 3 was pretty good. Obviously, the technology's moved along at this point and everything, and it was pretty good. But just if you look it up on YouTube, just look for the original Dawn of War intro video. It was spectacular. It was the Blood Ravens, like on a hill, basically fighting against orcs that are coming over the line, and just really super cool. So, yeah, I would definitely... Now, that being said, I watched the Ultramarine movie about 5 years ago, and that was terrible, so... Sorry, I've got a tickle in my throat. I don't think it would ruin my... I can just ignore things if they're bad, you know what I mean? So, there's that, too. Excuse me. Oh, gosh, well, it's 11, and I really have to cough and possibly sneeze. So, I appreciate you guys coming by today and checking out the video and talking and asking questions and all that stuff. I hope that you get a chance to do some priming yourself if the weather is good in your neck of the woods. I didn't make it. Sorry. So, yeah, definitely get out and do some priming if you can. If you can't, work on some projects. The thing that really came best for me from this whole thing yesterday was just was the kick in the ass that I needed to get some stuff finished that had been sitting in my basement, some of it literally for 5 years. So when you get that motivation and it matches with like the ability or the time that you have or the materials on hand, when you get the motivation, go, just make it happen. Because if you think, oh man, I really should paint something right now, and then you get distracted and go, well, I think I'm gonna go do something else. When you take that motivation and go, you know what I mean? Seriously. So anyway, I will hopefully see you guys again, not next week, but the week after, because it's the Every Other Sunday show. Until then, I'll keep making videos on Fridays, so you can keep watching those. And I don't know, keep painting, keep building, keep on keeping on, and we'll see you next time.